And now, broadcasting on StarWorldWideNetworks.com, it's time for the Cannabis Reporter Radio Show with Snowden Bishop. Listen in as Snowden interviews cannabis industry pioneers, marijuana experts, policymakers, medical practitioners, patients, and other amazing individuals with compelling stories to share. It all happens right now. Here's the Cannabis Reporter, Snowden Bishop.
Welcome back to the Cannabis Reporter. Using marijuana as medicine is nothing new. For centuries, it was a staple of doctors and healers in both Eastern and Western medicine. Of course, that changed with the advent of prohibition. Since then, it's been replaced with tightly controlled pharmaceuticals that require doctor prescriptions dispensed at pharmacies. Even though nearly half of the states in the U.S. have passed some form of legalization, well, at least for medical use, it's still considered a Schedule I drug, which means it's federally illegal for a doctor to write a prescription for it. Some may go as far as to recommend that a patient try it, but most doctors remain hands-off for fear they could be handcuffed. Unfortunately, that means patients are left to fend for themselves if they want to medicate with marijuana. It's the Wild West of medicine all over again. If they're lucky, they'll get advice from a qualified health practitioner who knows enough to recommend strains or give dosing instructions, but they're not that easy to find. For the most part, new medical marijuana patients must rely on sales personnel, commonly known as bud tenders, at their local dispensaries to get advice about the best strains, compounds, and dosing for their medical conditions. In a way, they're expected to be surrogates of doctors, pharmacists, and nutritional advisors. Question is, are they qualified to have patients' health in their hands? Well, that's the topic of today's show. So let's just get to it. First, I'd like to introduce two successful entrepreneurs, Nadeem Al-Hasan and Thomas Rimbach, founders of Baked Brothers Medicinal Formulas. Welcome to both of you.
Well, hello. Thank you for having us on the show.
Thank you, Snowden.
My pleasure. And then joining us on the phone from Colorado is an educator and founder of Green Culture Ed, a new cannabis college, Evan Ericsson. Happy you could join us, Evan.
Hello, Snowden. Thank you. Appreciate you all having me on the show today.
Well, welcome. Glad you all are here. So, Nadeem and Thomas, I kind of wanted to start with you. You have Baked Brothers, which are medicinal syrups and gummies and other edibles, I believe, right? Or just
right now we have only two products, which is the syrup and the gummies.
Right. So the other thing that's very interesting is that your mission is dedication to medication.
Absolutely.
And what I learned about you recently, which is why I was really interested to talk to you, is that you've created some educational materials that you pass out to the sales personnel in dispensaries, and I believe also it helps them to educate the customers, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So what I wanted to get to, before I bring Evan in on this, is what was it that was in your mind when you decided to do this? Were you challenged by the fact that they didn't really know how to talk about your medicine?
You know, it kind of goes back to how you started in the intro or on the today's topic, is that are these bud tenders qualified to have these or to help these patients? And that's a tough answer. That's a tough question. So That was kind of what was going through our mind right now. Are these bud tenders qualified to talk about the medications being dispensed to these patients? Do they know what they're talking about? A lot of them do, and a lot of them don't. A lot of them have kind of a biased opinion or what works for them, you know. So, but what works for me might not work for you, and so that's what we want to address here. And so what we have brought to the table is more so an educational pamphlet that will discuss not necessarily just Baked Bros products, but edibles in general. So what we like to call marijuana's beginner guide.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that having that at hand has really been helpful? Do you think it's...
Yes. So getting these out to these dispensaries, the doctor's offices, that's our main targets, because that's where most patients are. You know, any newcomers, they're going to doctor's offices, and any patients are being sent to the dispensaries. So that's where we want to put these educational pamphlets and these trifolds. So To be clear, though, we have two different educational trifolds. So we have a trifold front and back that is what we, again, consider a beginner's guide to marijuana edibles. And then we have an educational pamphlet for the bud tenders where Thomas and I, between Bake Bros, will set up times for the dispensaries to go in and, 30 minutes before they open or whenever they schedule, and we get to sit down with their bud tenders and really key in on our products and the questions that patients might be having on our products or products in general. Are they gluten-free? How do I dose this? How do I store it? What is THC? What's the difference between THCA and THC? So those are a lot of the things that we try and cover throughout the trifold and the educational pamphlet for the bud tenders.
Right. And Evan, you had one of the first medical marijuana delivery services in Colorado, and I know that really inspired you to start the Green Culture Ed Cannabis Academy. Tell me what your experiences were with working with dispensaries at that time.
Yes, definitely. So, when we first started in the industry, there was really only, I think, 2 or 3 medical doctors making recommendations at that time. So for the most part, even the physical-based ones, which there was a couple, basically put business cards down, at these doctor offices. So that's really how we got kick-started. And due to the, environment with legalities and, the federal pressure against medical marijuana, we never really went to that physicality. So we did the delivery model, and it went really well. We got up to 70-plus patients. And we did a lot of initiatives in terms of different types of continued health, different things that could really help support patients. So back then it was a lot more, with the dispensary model, especially with it being recreational now, you have a broader amount of people using marijuana. Whereas then we really did work with a lot of medical needed patients. So education was a part of really trying to help those individuals because, we would actually come to their homes and spend time with them too. So there was definitely a caregiver aspect in terms of our relationship and not just kind of how it is more of a retail environment now in the current environment.
Yeah. And how many bud tender trainees have you had through the Green Culture Ed so far?
So largely, our education is based asynchronistic. Professionally, even while working in the medical marijuana industry, with the group I was associated with, I have always professionally worked in education, technology, and publishing industry. So with that, how we design Green Culture was really to remove the limitations, of space and time. So essentially, you could have your education on demand. So we have students enrolling, 24/7 into not just the bud tender certification, but the majority of our curriculum really is focused on cultivation. But with the bud tender certification, we've been able to incorporate, a lot of aspects, as just spoken a few minutes ago, just the generalities of what's the difference between, say, sativa and indica. So we brought in a lot of those just really kind of basic 101 cultivation pieces into our bud tender certification, and then also brought in a lot of those kind of just general retail environment type of training that is needed as well. So it kind of hits on a lot of topics in a broad stroke, if you will, but it really kind of does a comprehensive kind of get your feet on the ground and running once you're completed with it.
Right. Nadeem and Thomas, I don't know which one would like to answer this, but when you meet people who have had a lot of training, do you really feel that has made a lot of difference?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like especially if the training is facts, or at least as close to we can as what we can know now about cannabis. It's very difficult for a patient, even such as myself, to have confidence in medication. And if I'm educated on it, then I'm going to have more of a confidence taking that medication and listening to these bud tenders.
Yeah. Were you a patient before getting into business?
Actually, yes, I was. I have some PTSD from when I was in the military.
I should let everybody know that you were in the U.S. Navy.
Yes.
I'm a Navy brat.
Awesome. Yeah, I was in there for 4 years. But yes, I did. I used it for anxiety, and I would find a difference between not just a sativa versus indica, but two sativas. They're different. I mean, a super silver diesel might give you a different effect as opposed to a lucid dream. Lucid dream will give you those good positive effects of a sativa, but it won't give you those paranoia or those bad effects from like paranoia as such. The terpenes ratios will drop that feeling down. So when we decided to come out with our products, we wanted to make sure it wasn't just a sativa or indica dominant, it was a strain-specific setup. And that definitely makes it much more difficult on us and all of our workers, but in much smaller batches, but it's a lot easier to get the patient what they're looking for as opposed to just, oh, is this a sativa that I like or is this an indica that I like?
Right. And when you were medicating before, you had your own products to really differentiate.
Right.
How was your experience in dealing with the dispensaries? Did you feel like you were getting what you needed in terms of the information, or were you completely on your own?
From the dispensaries, absolutely no. There was no education whatsoever. It was really just to sell it, really, and you just buy a sativa or indica. That was really the only separation that we would see, and I'd had to understand it myself and had to look up our own information in order to educate myself.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Lots of it.
I can imagine. Evan, I've met a couple of people who are working on trying to find some kind of standardization and all of that. How are you handling that through the college?
Yes, definitely. So a major trend really we're seeing across the board, from K-12 to higher ed, is competency-based education. So the idea that you can have standards, and then also being able to have the ability to express some degree of competency within those standards. So, at large, you're just seeing that as a trend. Technically, you're seeing that functionality come to a hand in terms of learning management systems and being able to actually gauge that type of, in terms of even reporting type of learner analytics. So that is really just right now a huge trend across the board. In terms of how we developed our education, we built it in a modular sense. So really it is kind of in essence, in terms of that pedagogy and development of the instructional design pieces, kind of the same, because we look at having just one area of mastery, and so that's how we build our education is like we have individual online courses, a group of courses then make a program, a group of programs that make a certification. So you're able to then, master, each modular aspect of your education, and then those are essentially building blocks as you continue down that learning path.
Right, and then you also have training for health practitioners as well, right? Or is it just bud tenders right now?
So we do, in terms of our education and the direction we're moving, right now 90% is based around cultivation. We do have, some branches out into some state training, for example, Colorado, label packaging, different types of standards and safety measures. But right now our real initiative is getting to professional education, so being able to essentially offer those CEUs. And we have a couple initiatives going on right now to go through that process. Since really no cannabis college you'll find out there really is accredited. There are some mild levels of accreditation, like, for example, the Colorado Board of Education has here, but it really doesn't do anything more than put a piece of paper on your wall that doesn't really put much value in terms of the quality of education. So that's what we're working on. And in the intermediary, we're working at launching live webinars, free ones just to support the industry. We're a partner with the NCIA. So we have a lot of different people out there that I know would really love to use our platform just to kind of show and tell what they have. And really our initiative is to support the industry. And eventually we'll do paid webinars too. But right now we're going to start off with this kind of, free taste and try type aspect for webinars.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the packaging, because I can imagine that for both of you, it's difficult to have, for the states, if you have to have different packaging for different states.
Yes. Snowden packaging will be the death of us.
I can imagine.
It's constantly changing, and we're constantly updating it, and we're constantly trying to stay ahead as well. Within our packaging, what we most pay attention to is we try and answer as many questions that the patient might have on the package before they even get to the bud tender. How many doses is in the package, how to dose it, what to dose it with, where to store it, how to store it, how many milligrams of activated THC there are, and so on. So
clearly,
yes.
Very clearly, so you don't have to search on the label. It's right there in front of your face, so you can understand.
Yeah, that's helpful. But I mean, what other requirements do you have to meet per state? I mean,
so Arizona doesn't have a stringent rule on packaging. Colorado does a little bit more stringent. Arizona, we really don't have to have much of a standard. So that's where we came in to hopefully set a standard here in Arizona. We just put in an order for some child-resistant bags that come through, so they don't have the tear notches at the top now. You can't tear it. You have to cut it with scissors. We don't want any children getting a hold of this just as much as their parents hopefully don't want them getting a hold of it. So we're trying to do as much as we can when changing our packaging so that we can hopefully influence all the other edible companies in Arizona to follow along so that any edible that's in any patient's hands is responsible.
However, as we continue to grow and continue to expand, we do have to be conscious of the other states' laws and requirements for their packaging. So that is something that we do stay up on and have to continue staying up on as we progress because they're different.
Right. And Evan, are these courses state specific that you offer?
Yes. So the one we did so far is for Colorado specific. So we will be really honing in at the state level as, we're speaking towards standards, as those really do get solidified. Each state's kind of its own show right now. But Colorado is definitely taking the lead. So in terms of kind of the go-to regulation that probably has been vetted the most, we're kind of using Colorado as our point of reference.
Right. But people from California can take your courses and people from Arizona can take your courses and be confident that they're going to meet some kind of standard eventually?
Yes. For the Colorado one specifically, our faculty member that developed it, who's actually on the committee, who put together those different regulations into place, just like our cannabis chemistry and analysis and testing. Our PhD faculty member, he was on that committee before, doing standard testing for different, fertilizers and chemicals and so forth. So we're really trying to really go to, the horse's mouth, if you will, and then publish from there.
Yeah. So what are the plans for Baked Brothers in terms of expanding availability in different states? Where are you headed?
We are currently looking to expand to California. We're in the middle of a deal right now, working with a manufacturer, and they also produce in Colorado. So we're looking to expand it straight to there as well. New Mexico is getting things going. We've already been speaking to one of the dispensaries out there, and they share the same vision as us. It's all about the patients, and we're expanding to those three right now. At the end of this year, we expect to be in those three and hopefully some more.
Yeah. So do any of your brochures then go straight to consumers to educate them?
Yes. So that's what I was trying to explain in the beginning, that we have a specific 2-page fold out. So it's a 2-page left and right, front and back for the bud tenders. And then we have a front and back trifold for the patients, which are available they'll continue to be available. We're printing more and sending them out to the doctor's offices and to the dispensaries.
Okay. When you said you were sending them out to the doctor's offices, I thought maybe they were for health practitioners.
Those are for the patients in general.
Right. Okay.
I encourage the health practitioners to pick them up, to educate themselves as well. Furthermore that they may be able to do so. But these are actual handouts for the patients. I do have an example of one here, just the front side, for you to take a look at when we're.
I think I may have seen that.
Okay.
Before I looked it up.
Probably, yes, more than likely.
Yeah.
But this again, it's our guide to marijuana edibles, the medicinal benefits behind them. Kind of lists out the differences, as Thomas kind of mentioned. What is sativa? What is indica? What is THC? What is a house blend? A house blend is something we never use. We believe that every patient, is looking for a specific therapeutic benefit, and they're only going to get that through a specific strain, not a house blend. So we, again, try to put this into words and onto paper, on tangible items that patients can take home and study and get as bag gifts as they leave the dispensary.
Yeah, and Evan, how far do you drill down in your courses for specific medications that are available from companies like Baked Brothers and other makers of medicinals?
Yeah. So, really coming from an education perspective and really trying to maintain that unbiasedness in terms of what we deliver, we really don't promote any products or brands or anything along those lines, but rather, for this specific example, we'd like to, have them come on board and say in a webinar, for example, would be our delivery method. How do you, make these different edibles? What is kind of the general rule of thumb? Just talk about, say, the process, edify around that process, and then afterwards, provide your contact information, and then be able to follow up, with, each student individually, and, then indirectly, if there is a sale, at least we're out of the process. So that's where we have to be unbiased, in terms of that piece there. So, it's just kind of a standard every education institution kind of, has to take, if you will.
Right. So then, rather than drilling down to brands, you drill down to types of medicine, and not just, the differences in the strains or the indicas, sativas, THC, CBD, all of that, but syrups versus gummy bears, or flour versus infusion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just the different processes, different ways to, facilitate the usage of, cannabis, whether it is syrup or maybe a tincture, for example. So, so we'll definitely hammer down into those pieces and get into the nitty gritty. Of course, we always say we're not medical professionals, so always consult your doctor as well. But we'll definitely go as far as we can, as long as it's education based.
Yeah, and consult your doctor is sort of a
double-bladed sword.
It's a double-bladed sword, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken with people who've said that they've learned that treating with cannabis would be really beneficial to them. They go to their doctor, and their doctor says, "Well, I'm not going to touch that."
Right, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, and how do you think that we can get the doctors on board, given the fact that it's still a Schedule I drug?
That is going to take time,
Yeah.
as I believe as progression or as recreation progresses, that might open some more doors or open more eyes, or maybe open minds for doctors.
Mm-hmm.
I think the legalities is what just holds them back, because I've spoken to several doctors, even my personal doctors, about it. They know what I do as my profession, and they love it. They just can't touch it because of the federal license structure.
I agree. You know what? I have a particular story, or we have a particular story real quick. We have a patient, and her sister has she's in stage 2 leukemia, and we were off the market for a while because we made a transition from northern Arizona into Phoenix. So during that time off, there was about 3 to 4 months where patients kind of struggled to find our products. And this was one of our patients who had stocked up on the product before we had made the transition. We spoke to our patients on a daily basis, every day, hundreds of patients.
Wow.
Every week we talked to hundreds of patients, letting them know where we'll be available and when. But back to it, she had told me that, and I couldn't believe how brave she was that she did this. She took our pourable THC syrup, and she went to the Mayo Clinic, and she asked like 5 different doctors, "Can you help me find this? Can you help me get this? Can you help, and she was turned down by 4 of them, and then the 5th doctor was like, "Listen, I really strongly advise you to keep pushing forward with medical marijuana. There are benefits behind it. I strongly advise it, but we can't help you inside of this facility." So back to what Thomas said, there are a lot of doctors that want to, but they're bound by legalities to push forward or even to advise. Because the way she communicated that to me was that, this doctor pulled her aside and kind of whispered it on the hush, like, "Please don't tell her that I just said that."
Right. Yeah, and I think that a lot of hospitals hold that policy, and the doctors will lose their place in the hospital if they violate it.
Right.
Exactly.
Evan, what do you think the plans might be for a college such as yours to start targeting doctors and just educating them on the subject in general?
Yes, definitely. I would really say it's kind of a 2-tiered approach. We're taking. We're looking at obviously trying to be able to provide them professional, continuing medical education so they could actually maintain their licensure through our education. So just being us available to be able to do that, is one of our initiatives. And then as kind of a follow-up, I guess kind of if you will, a partnership. In terms of, some, doctors, are dedicated where they only see medical patients or, recommending marijuana. Whereas on the opposite side, these big hospitals, a lot of policy bureaucracy, and then these doctors being confined in that, that area, that's, I think, probably a very tough nut to crack. But the ones that have already adopted, cannabis and are recommending it, that's where I see the opportunity really to then help, edify their patients, whether, a lot of times patients can't afford to go to a dispensary and they have to cultivate at home. So just really being able to provide a support network for their patients, becoming our students, as well as then trying to help support the doctors and continuing their education and say their nurse practitioners, whoever may be on their staff as well. So, that's the two pieces really that we're pushing for. And, we're very flexible and open. That's the nice thing about the cannabis industry, everything being a small business is, it's just, how much effort you want to put into working together, and that's something that you can do easily, not having these big businesses, putting those barriers up like that.
Right. How often do patients take your courses?
We get, enrollments, I would say half of our enrollments on a daily basis are outside the United States on average. But we get, definitely a few dozen enrollments a day, at least, depending on their interests and whatnot. So it definitely varies for sure.
Yeah, as a journalist, I was thinking about taking one. I just can't seem to find the time to enroll. But it seems like it would just be helpful for any user to understand what a bud tender understands.
Yeah, we even had an initiative too. Like, we reached out to all the cannabis tourism companies, not just here in Colorado but elsewhere. Basically saying, hey, let's do some type of edification process for these tourists that are coming, and let's do it before they show up, so they actually know what they're looking at. And we're trying to work out some type of the bud tender education we have available, but trying to work it out as part of, say, that package where we do a heavily reduced tuition rate, for them to be able to include that as part of that quote-unquote tour package. Nobody came back and said hi to me even, but, there's different things we're always reaching out to do, but just everybody's different levels of receptiveness,
Yeah. Nadeem, how many people work at your company?
We are an army of 3, and we just brought on 2 more, so we are an army of 5 now.
Wow.
Yes.
Just recently, like 2 weeks ago, we just brought on 2 more.
I had visions of an enormous sterile factory with lots of people and bottles on assembly lines and that sort of thing, but it's not that way.
Well, you got the sterile part right. It is extremely clean.
Yeah.
It is. We are. Yes, it is very clean. It's very white.
Yeah.
Very non-colorful. Lots of scrubs, hairnets, booties, things like that. And
well, that's good to hear.
Yes,
we have good qualified workers there, and that's what's most important.
Right.
They all take their job very seriously, and they know what to look for and what not to look for when bottling, packaging, and
you wouldn't even probably know, but every single one of our gummy batches is mixed by hand. Every single one of them.
We do not spray our
There's
gummies.
no
We don't
spraying or
believe in
anything.
propylene glycol. We don't believe in spraying.
Good.
We don't believe that that's an accurate way to medicate your gummies. It's just through the trial and error that we did, that's not an accurate way.
Yeah, or brownies or
We
cookies.
tried using big, huge, cylindrical, big, like a concrete mixer and stuff to mix them, but it's just not an efficient and correct way to make every sour gummy bear 10 milligrams like we claim it is. And so we have to do it in small batches so that we can stay with that consistency, so that every patient, when they go to that gummy bear or they go to that milliliter of syrup or 10 milliliters of syrup, they know and they're confident they're going to receive that same effect every time.
Yes.
And how did you educate yourselves on this?
100% self. And really in Colorado, we learned a lot from a lot of the cannabis economy. They have a lot of education on it. We went to a lot of different shows, and we tried to learn from there. The NCIA has had a couple of shows that we've gone to. We learned about legalities and stuff like that too. But really, it's just self-teaching. And we learned, we didn't like taking an edible and then not getting the experience that we thought we were going to get, or taking it or ingesting an edible and then it not working, and then you take the other half of the brownie later, and then you're talking in the corner to yourself, and it's really, really scary, and we don't like that offense. So
Totally.
especially me, I'm really, really picky on that, and I wanted to make sure that every patient didn't go through with that as well, because it's already a bad name. Cannabis already is, and if somebody does go ahead and open up for that one day to try this edible, and they completely just fall asleep, or they get too paranoid, and they freak out and they go crazy,
and we lose that patient forever.
Right, then you lose the patient forever, and not just for edibles or for our brand. It's the industry and the
cannabis,
beautiful alternative medicine that
our goal is to remove that negative notion, that the cannabis industry has been given, and that's what we're trying to do through our products and through the education, like Thomas.
Yeah,
and that's why we start from the bottom, so that way we can so that everybody understands how this works, and then they won't have those bad experiences.
Yeah, and Evan, I think that's probably the same goal for you too. I mean, to keep this industry thriving, you really need to make sure that the people who are representing the industry to the public, which would be, the people in the dispensaries, are actually knowledgeable and understanding what it is that they're doing.
Right.
So I'll share our philosophy with you. I've said it before, but for the listeners, Bake Bro's philosophy is traditional westernized medicine has always been pills, syrups, and injections. So that's why we, took the most presentable route of the syrups. That's very common. I mean, I don't know one person here today that doesn't have a syrup in their medicine cabinet, whether it be NyQuil, DayQuil.
It's familiar to the patient.
It's familiar to the patient. So when a doctor recommends a patient, especially someone who's new, whether they're 30 or 65 or whatever age, if they're new and they're going to the cannabis or to the dispensaries, they're talking to the bud tender, and then they're saying, "I have pain." Well, that's when educating the bud tenders comes very handy, because we don't want that bud tender to be like, "Oh man, well I love brownies for my pain. Try this one."
Yeah.
That's when.
Or what kind of pain?
That's when educating them about products like a syrup, where you can dose yourself through an oral syringe. You can do 1 milliliter, which is 5 milligrams of activated THC, or you can do a teaspoon, which is 25 milligrams of activated THC. Knowing your dose is what is very important as well. You have to know your dose before you consume. The rule of thumb is you can always eat more, you can't eat less. So back to our philosophy, it's just that it's traditional westernized medicine. So when a patient picks up the bottle of pourable THC syrup and they read that on the label, they know exactly what it is, pourable THC syrup, and it's a bottle that they're familiar with. They've seen this type of medicine before on their shelves, or they've been prescribed it, or they've picked it up from the store, a pourable syrup form of medication. And so that's why we aim for products like that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and Evan, when it comes to educating educators too, is this something that is in your purview?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've already put something together. Obviously we know there's a lot of different, cannabis or pot schools that are out there, some good, some better than others and so forth. But really, the point I'm trying to make is, kind of how these, different education organizations popped up is, it kind of came around, they liked pot and then they thought it'd be cool to teach about it. That's really where we're coming from, an educational type of hat. For example, I even homeschooled growing up and graduated from one of the first virtual charter schools, so it's really just been in my blood. So with that, everybody thinks it's a great idea to teach, and to teach online with that. Lots been more physical-based education, but now we're seeing more online education. Well, with that, and these pot shops and schools that don't have the proper pedagogy and education theory to deliver online, really kind of get lost because they're in the weeds. So that's where we really put together what I reference as our basic course pattern. And essentially it just teaches teachers how to teach online. And it's going through all the different aspects, whether it's the theory and philosophy of teaching online or how to create that artifact or whatever media element you might be using to do that instructional design process. So with our faculty members, we provide all the tools for free. So all you need to have essentially is a headset and a computer. You can create kind of Web 2.0 videos, whether you're creating ebooks, assessments, and so forth. So we really take that step further and really do some hand-holding with our faculty members to complete that instructional design process, but really to help them conceptualize as well as give them the tools so they could do it 100% on their own. And that's what we find typically after a faculty member publishes the first course, they kind of figure it out. And then from then on, whether they're doing a live webinar or publishing the asynchronous type of course, they can pretty much do it self-sufficiently.
Yeah. And the college, the cannabis college, does that follow any? And forgive me, I haven't taken a course, so I don't really know. You worked at Blackboard. Is it a pretty typical module system like you would find there or some of the popular online universities?
So really the two things, and then really the fuzzy gray line, you will, is, what is the platform, and then really what is the courseware. And then that line gets kind of grayed out because when you're consuming that education, you really don't know where the platform starts and really the instructional design started. So Blackboard in itself is a platform, but the material, it's agnostic in terms of the content it'll deliver. So it would deliver, any type of education, not just cannabis, but it's a platform for delivery.
So how do you? Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish.
And then just the last piece is then, doing the instructional design pieces, then to really utilize that platform 100% in terms of adoption to then deliver whatever knowledge you're trying to do. So you got the platform, then you got the instructional design pieces.
So how do you handle, students always have questions. How do you handle that?
So we have just, a general help desk. We have a ticket resolution typically within the hour from 9 to 5. So we'll respond and fix any issues right there on the spot. If we need to, we'll do a webinar, get on the phone. I like to publish a lot of videos, so I'll just do a little how-to quick video, click here, and issue resolve type of stuff.
Right. And I was thinking more in terms of practical questions about.
Oh, yeah. So with all our courses, they're all built, asynchronous, so on demand. Anybody can come and complete on their own timeline. But we have a form within every course, and we really kind of parallel that to a good bottle of wine. The more and more time you give it, the more and more discussion there are, just the better it gets, whether it's the wine or the topics that are being talked about. So the form is there. Any question that any students ever ask and that our faculty will reply to, you'll be able to kind of review those, so you'll be able to learn from your peers as well as go through your own type of learning class as well.
Yeah. So prospective students, what's your elevator to prospective students? Why would you tell someone that they absolutely need to educate themselves if they're a bud tender or whatever? I'm just curious how you would present that.
Yeah, definitely. In general, when you're buying something online or something digital, you really don't know what to expect. So, a lot of times you might kind of, get a little bit of a letdown. So one thing we always start off is we have a free online course. So we always encourage any prospective student to go ahead, go through that, so you really know what to expect. Because we don't want to be a disappointment. If we're not, 100%, then obviously we'll issue a refund too. So we have a 30-day refund policy, no questions asked. So we make it really easy to become a student, and we don't make a difficult process. We have phenomenal support. Services is really what we follow up our knowledge base with, just being there as a resource. So, there's a variety of reasons. Obviously to find students, that's been more of an issue, not making them happy, but finding students to make happy. Because, obviously the industry has been pretty much blackballed, from like Facebook ads, Google AdWords, and so forth. So to really get out there, has been much more of a trial and error type of issues and environment than the back end, if you will.
Yeah. And what's your speech to people about needing to know things? Like when you run into dispensary technicians that just don't know what they're talking about, how do you approach that with them?
Yeah, one thing that's nice is, what we use for our learning management system is Moodle. It's open source. You own it just as much as I do. So it's free, but it's free like a puppy, not free like a beer. So, at the end of the day, you can set up and install it, but, after you get to that point, you're not going to know what the heck to do, essentially. So with that, we've been speaking to some dispensaries who have liked our education, and they kind of want to, if you will, create their own internal employee type of training environment. So, with that, that's where I can set up another instance, take the courseware that, we've created, put it into their instance. But, to really address your question with these different operators for dispensaries, even getting outside of the cannabis knowledge and the education, we really need to get back to accounting the ABCs, 1, 2, 3, because you need to have your general HR, like sexual harassment, A lot of these different types of training is for onboarding of employees and also just trying to have a higher retention rate, less turnover. So you can have different HR classes, just as simple as how to clean the bathroom or how to clear out the POS at the end of the day. So there's different education areas, that we can really deliver on. If we need to do custom instruction design work, that's no problem. But as we get more and more from small business to big businesses in the industry, we're going to have to standardize to some level. I'm not saying sell our souls like a big corporate entity, but there's a lot with that, less lawsuits and standardization for employees and stuff like that.
Right. So it's really into the management side of the business too.
Yeah, definitely. Like your human resources really overlaps with training. Almost 100%.
And there's a big learning curve for everyone, I think, because the industry is so new. So, Nadeem, what do you think about that? How do you approach it when you do meet people who obviously need a little bit of education? How do you go to them and say, I would think it would be a little bit of a sensitive issue when you're in the field.
Well, we do encounter that a lot, and so you just do have to be patient, and you have to be aware that the industry is new and that there is a lot to learn and that there's a lot changing. But the bud tenders in general, I encourage, if that's what you're asking, people in general, just the bud tenders, or both.
Bud tenders.
Bud tenders are
people interacting with the patients.
Right. Bud tenders, are direct extension to the patients, from manufacturer to consumer. Because the manufacturer, sure, we're back here making the edibles, and we're focused on quality control. We're focused on consistency. We're focused on safety. We're focused on being clean and sanitary. And then once it gets to, what I'm saying is that we will do as much as we can as the manufacturers to put out as much educational material as we can, like these trifolds, like the educational pamphlets, like our websites. But
you'd be surprised. A lot of the bud tenders want to learn, and when we have the information that they want, they will open up. They take to it. A lot of these bud tenders want to know. They want to be the most educated inside the dispensary. They want to know more so they can help more. I would say, at least with my experience, most of the bud tenders here in Arizona, they want to help people.
Absolutely.
They're not there just to get a free gram. They're there to help people. And when we see these people, they usually come to us asking for education instead of just being in the quiet. And then you don't really see those people much. Most of the people come to us and ask for education.
Yeah. And would you recommend that other manufacturers do exactly what you're doing with the pamphlets?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. The more education to the patients is the better.
Yeah, the more the merrier. Again, the bud tenders are a direct extension to the patient, so the more that we can inform them and refer to them to go to places like Steep Hill Labs or Skunk Farm Research, those are two good sources for education on cannabis in general, which we pulled a lot off the internet. We pulled a lot off reading books. Reading is how we have probably educated ourselves the most into understanding cannabis. That way we can reciprocate the information that we learn to the bud tenders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and isn't there sort of a fine line, I would think, between teaching the bud tenders to be giving advice but not being a doctor and giving medical advice?
Yes,
I'm sure.
And
Evan
what
has
happens
the same
when a patient comes in and says, "Oh, I have multiple sclerosis. What should I take for that?" I mean, because literally, if they don't know of a medical practitioner who can help them sort it out in advance, they say, "Oh, I want to try medical cannabis for my MS." So they go to the bud tender and they say, "I have MS. What would you recommend?" I mean, really, that is kind of crossing a line, isn't it?
Agreed.
Right.
It is.
They need to know what the symptoms of the MS are that they want to relieve. So there's different, like sativas will be more of your mind relief, anything with the mind. An indica is much more common with pain. So if MS was there and they seriously said, "I'm just in a crucial pain," we would start with an indica. And then you would probably go from that indica to a different strain to what your favorite is.
Right.
So instead of commenting on the ailment that they're dealing with, it's going to be more important for the bud tender to understand what a sativa does, what an indica does, what these specific strains do. That way they don't necessarily start talking about the ailment, but they talk about what these strains do, and the patient themselves know what kind of relief they're looking for. So once the bud tender elaborates that an indica will give you, pain relief or full body relief, or this Gorilla Glue number 4 is great, for sleep or pain or, stimulating appetite. I didn't overcross my boundaries and say, well, what's wrong with you? I just listed what this particular strain will do, and if that fits into the category of the ailment that you're trying to relieve, that might be a better route to adjust
then it would be up to the patient to decide.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Evan, in the courses, how do you explain to bud tenders the way that they're supposed to deal with that particular scenario?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess in looking specifically at the curriculum we have and sativa versus indica, we really approach it two different ways. One, we do it just at the kind of the plant level, how the plant grows, how they look, how they differ from indica, sativa. Indica is short and stocky, sativa long and branchy. And then on the other part of the bud tender training, then we really get into the chemicals. So then really explaining that this indica will make you more drowsy, sativa will be more heady. So we really address it at 2 different points. Or 2 different perspectives there.
Yeah. Wow. Well, what would you like prospective students to know the most, Evan, right now?
I think we've done a great job so far, in just terms of our background and working with some of the best people we could find to put our courses together. But really, we're just more so excited about the future, I've done probably over 5,000 webinars in my career professionally, and, looking really to bring that to the table, getting speakers, really from all over the world and, over different topics. So that's the next thing, really we're looking forward to. In the meantime, check out our free course, sign up. We do a weekly blog. Once a week you'll get some type of, essay over cultivation in general. And, so we definitely give a lot of free resources out there and whatnot. So those are a couple things just to, I guess, keep on your radar here coming in the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So, and Nadeem, what would you like people to know most about education or what you do?
We've said it before, and we're going to just, again, put more emphasis on it, understanding the strains, understanding what each strain does, and what's your dose. So we want patients to question themselves, what's your dose? So what is my dose? That is important. I believe, the standard dose, or what is becoming a standard dose, is 10 milligrams of activated THC. And so understanding what 10 milligrams is and what it can do for you, just again like a 10 milligram Zoloft or whatnot, it's not a lot, but it can be. You have to understand what that is. We have patients that need onward and upward to 300 milligrams a day, and we have patients that only need 10 milligrams a day. So understanding what your dose is will help educate the community.
Yeah. Well, and everybody's going to be affected by 10 milligrams differently.
Everybody will be different.
Yeah.
You could be 300 pounds, you could be 150 pounds, you could be 20 years old, you could be 50 years old. It doesn't matter. There's liver functionality.
Even male versus female.
Yeah.
There's studies behind that show that
your liver will convert, the medicine into 11-hydroxy THC, and it's important to understand that.
Yeah.
It's argued it's 2 to 3 times stronger than just THC, and that's produced by our own liver.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So actually, that's kind of a fun fact, guys. It's arguably, anywhere from 2 to 4 times stronger, just as Thomas just said, and that's because that in edible, it's already decarboxylated. The marijuana is already decarbed or decarboxylated into the edible, as opposed to rolling a joint, for an example. When we roll that joint and we light the end of that and we inhale, it's that heat, that vapor, which is activating the THC, taking it from THCA to THC. And so through our method of infusion, the oil's already activated, and that's why somebody was like, oh yeah, I can smoke a joint just fine. Well, you may have a 10 milligram joint that might end up being 7 milligrams now, or maybe even a little less. So, but when you have a 10 milligram edible, you're getting within vape grows, you're getting that 10 milligram edible,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something to be aware of too. So understanding what your dose is.
And
Right.
something that we're just now learning about recently, probably within the last couple of months, and we're implementing into our products again, is the importance of terpenes. The strain
Yes.
is the terpene. When you get the hungry, happy, sleepy feeling, or whatever feeling, the effect that you like from that strain, it's consistent with the ratio of all the terpenes inside of that strain. So right now we are currently distilling all of our product, separating the terpenes, and then reintroducing the terpenes so that this is the cleanest product. There won't be, and there's no like mold. Right? You can't in Colorado. Tell them a little bit about Colorado.
Oh yeah, I mean there was most recently, just a couple months ago, there was over 100 edibles pulled off the market, more than that.
More than that. 3 companies
due
or
to
so.
pesticides and mold and things like that. And through our extraction process, which is now called extraction, we
eliminate
that.
all mildew, any problems with cleanliness or sterility. So, and we reintroduce the terpenes. So a lot of people complain about the taste of the product tasting like cannabis, but we just want them to remember that sometimes there's a bad taste, which is bad material that you're putting on edibles, and then there's a taste of the terpenes, which are actually a medicinal effect. And we want those in our bodies if we're using it for medicine.
And for patients or people listening, terpenes are oils, and terpenes are commonly found in cannabis, and they're commonly found in fruits, like lemongrass, lavender, peppermint. These are essential oils, or what terpenes are, and they're the chemotype of the plant. They're the characteristics of the plant, the smell, the taste. So if you remove those terpenes from the actual plant or hash oil concentrate, might I say, you're basically removing the characteristic of that. So if we have Granddaddy Perp and we separate the terpenes from the cannabinoids, you no longer have Granddaddy Perp.
You just have activated THC.
Yes.
And so what we do is we reintroduce those terpenes into it, so it's a strain. And so that way it does actually have a medicinal effect. When you don't reintroduce the terpenes, you're looking at something similar to Marinol, which is the synthetic THC, which only gets you psychoactively high, and you don't know what's really going on, or you feel that some type of relief from just kind of like opiates. It just takes your mind off of the thing. But in reality, the medicine is the terpenes.
There's a synergistic effect between terpenes and cannabinoids, just as there is with CBD, with THC. We hear that often, that there's a synergistic effect, that it has to be a ratio of THC to CBD. Well, that it's similar with terpenes. It's a synergistic effect when looking for full body relief.
Mm-hmm. This is serious business.
It has been a very fun road.
Yeah.
Yes, getting to play chemistry and figure out how to distill and isolate these separate.
Essentially, you're chemists.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Still learning.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, it's an exacting science, I would think, and it's really refreshing to know how seriously you're taking it too.
Yes. Thank you.
And I think that people who are skeptical or new to cannabis would be reassured to know that there is a science behind it, and I think they'd be reassured to know that the people who are dispensing the medication, who really, are in a way the only source of information for patients at this point until it becomes as rescheduled or something, so doctors can actually prescribe it or give advice about it. I mean, it really is reassuring to know.
Yes.
We try our best every single day. We get emails from all kinds of different institutions about the new up in science and stuff. We go through webinars for it, the truths, the myths, the facts about cannabis all the time. And we know there's a bunch of myths out there, but we want to wave out of those, and we want to bring the patients the facts so that they can medicate themselves correctly and efficiently.
Just educate the community. What's your dose?
Yeah, and Evan, to bring you back in, with all of this new information coming out every week, and I get a lot of it too as a journalist. I'm served tons of releases about this advancement and that advancement.
Totally.
How often do you have to update your courses?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's an issue you see really across the board in terms of kind of the idea of master courses, being able to have content and populate forward for students. Obviously there's always a built-in type of review system, in higher education. So, at a minimum, you're always in a 3 to 5 year type of period to review your curriculum. But with that said, our core curriculum we currently have is really kind of like the ABCs, 1, 2, 3. We don't get into the technicals too much. So in terms of it being relevant, it will, I would say, always in general be relevant, just with that kind of being in a general type of view for the curriculum. And as we kind of, do, say, more deep dives into subject matter that, is maybe a new founding in the industry and so forth, we're really hoping to be able to be even more responsive to bring that knowledge to market just because we can do live webinars and so forth. So that's where, we're looking to put together, kind of our calendar of webinar events and really find, the people who, whether they want to do it free or, or whatever it may be, just really helping to get it out there.
Yeah. Do you have specific courses on edibles or modules on edibles?
Yeah, we do have some, edibles, also some analysis and different things around the concentrates and stuff too. Some of it, we developed, here with some subject matter experts, but then the other half of it was developed with one of our faculty members who's a PhD taught at CU chemistry up there, but now he has his own analysis and testing lab here in Denver for Dispensary, so he's doing that now. So we do have some of that topics covered.
Yeah. Wow.
Awesome.
Well,
I'll be checking it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm inspired to check it out as well. Although I've been on your website a lot, I just haven't had a chance to sign up for anything busy. But I will. I'm going to make an effort. I think it's a good thing for a lot of people to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, any ideas, feedback, we're really a wide open door. We're always trying to, whether you're cannabis industry or, whatever you're looking for, we're always wholeheartedly open to any ideas, possibilities, or, whatever synergies we can create. So,
yeah.
We have, so anybody feel free to just reach out to us.
Yeah, well, I'll share your contact information with each other, everyone here today. So that's great. So I think we're about ready to wrap this up.
Awesome.
Any last thoughts, Thomas?
This has been a great experience. Thank you for having us on. Really, it's again it's another extension, just as it is with the bud tenders. This type of scenario is another extension to educating the community and educating the patients about our dedication to medication, about what's your dose, and about cannabis in general.
Right.
So we thank you for doing this.
Yes, thank you, Snowden.
Thank you both for being here. And Evan, thank you for calling in. It's really nice to speak with you about this. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening. And thank you to our guests, Nadeem Al-Hasan and Thomas Rimbach and Evan Ericsson, for sharing their great information with us today. And if you'd like to learn more about the Bake Brothers or Green Culture Ed, visit our website, thecannabisreporter.com. On the podcast page, look for today's podcast, and I'll have their information there so you can check them out, get the education that you need, be informed, and get healthy. So thank you for listening again, and I'd like to thank Kyle Pratt, our fantastic engineer, for all of his great work today. Thank you to Eric Goodall for our beautiful theme song, Evergreen. And once again, thank you. I'm Snowden Bishop, the Cannabis Reporter. Over and out.
Evergreen is coming.